It's me, Mario.
Be careful, it's a trap!
You were close.
Emergency maneuvers!
I am the Lord of Deadside.
I saw my life flash before my eyes! Sorry to jet, but I'm in a hurry.
Okay.
Hello everyone, welcome to Strictly 64. This is our first episode. I'm your host Kay, and joining me today is...
Clay.
Yep, that's right, so together we make Kay and Clay. Check us out on kayandclay.com where you can find the latest episodes of Strictly 64 as they are released. Also videos, editorials, and possibly other podcasts. See how this one goes first, but yeah, check us out. Clay, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Clay. I'm 27. I live in Indiana in the United States. Let's see, big N64 fan. It's probably my favorite console of all time. It's pretty close there, neck and neck with the Super Nintendo. So when I was approached about, we decided, talked about making a podcast all about N64 games, I was definitely on board. A couple years ago, I decided that I was going to try to collect every single N64 game, at least in the United States, maybe without some of the super expensive ones. And so ever since then, I've kind of slowly been working on my collection. And so this is a great show. It gives me a good motivation to get out there and get some of those games that I haven't played that maybe you've played, Kay. And yeah, so I'm a big N64 fan. I've had one ever since I was a kid. I don't know exactly when I got mine. I got it for Christmas when I was a child, and I assume it was either the same year or the year after it came out. And so I played a lot of games, but I wouldn't say I had, all the games, obviously. And so there's still quite a few out there that I haven't played, and so hoping to check out some titles here in the future that I haven't been able to check out. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay, thanks for that, Clay. Back to me. I suppose I should have done myself first, seeing as I'm the host, but I'm a generous host, so I'll let you go.
You are.
I'm Kay. As you can probably tell, I'm a dirty Brit. 28, so I'm the more mature one of the two.
Yes.
Lifelong gamer, lifelong Nintendo fan. No, don't take that wrong. I'm not, one of those Nintendo fans, but
I am.
Well, as a child, I was very much Nintendo with a little bit of Sega. But I'm just a general gamer these days. I mean, I own pretty much every recent system. But traditionally, I guess much like you, the N64 probably is my favourite. It goes back and forth sometimes between the Super Nintendo, N64, Xbox 360, PS2. I think those are sort of the real high-tier consoles if you're talking about, quality of games, variety of games. The N64 sometimes seems to get a little bit of a backlash these days, unfortunately. Some people sneer at it. Some people say the games were good for their times but haven't aged well. Personally, I disagree with this. I think the vast majority of first-party and second-party Nintendo 64 games hold up to this day, and a good portion of third-party ones do as well. So I think it'll be interesting over the next, however long we do this. I don't want to set a date, whether it's 20 weeks, 50 weeks, or 4 years. It'll be interesting to, go over some of these games. Some of them I played before, some of them I haven't. And, we can see what we think of them and if they stand the test of time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much all there is to it. It's pretty simple. I mean, I don't think we're doing anything revolutionary here. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, revolutionary. And we're just, we're going to break it down, and we got a couple different little, subsections of things that we're going to kind of talk about just to keep it somewhat organized, so that way we're not just, spouting out things we liked and didn't like. But yeah, it's pretty simple. We're just going to kind of dive in, give our personal opinions, and then go from there. We're by no means the best, most professional, know the most about N64, at least for me. I'm speaking for myself. I'm not a guru, so there might be things that come out of my mouth on this show that turn out to not be right or factual, so please forgive me, and we'll do our best to sound like we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I try not to say anything unless I know for a fact it's right. When I'm listening to other podcasts, there's nothing more annoying than someone saying something that you know is completely wrong, and you're just kind of like scratching your head like, oh, how could they not know that? But I mean, like you say, you don't know everything. You're owning that fact now. Yep. I mean, who can know everything? Well, actually, I'm sure there are much more professional podcasts who probably do. But oh well, we'll just see how we get on. Are you ready to dive into this week's game?
Yeah, let's do it.
Right, okay, so come with us as we look at an N64 launch title, probably not the one you'd expect. We're going to look at Pilotwings 64. Okay, so bringing us in, I thought first of all we could talk about our initial thoughts on the game. Clay, I told you earlier this week that I've only briefly played the game in the past, so I have much less experience with the game than you do, so I thought maybe you want to go first, because you've got like 20 years of experience with this game.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know about that, because that would insinuate that I've played it every year since I owned it, and that's simply not true, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, this was definitely one of the games that when we first got our N64, it was one of the games that we got with it. By that point, I'm sure it was, pretty easy to get a hold of, being a launch title, and we got it used and all that stuff. So as a kid, I did own this, and we played it, me and my siblings, and probably safe to say it was not my favorite N64 game as a child. With all the other games that we had at that point, there was probably close to a dozen that we had, but we still played it, and there was still things about it that were stuck in my brain to this day. And so we enjoyed it. We made our own fun with it more than anything. I think it definitely plays different back then when I was a kid than it does now. It kind of has a whole different meaning now, and it has a different challenge. But I think it was a little difficult for me as a kid, so I would say that it's probably not the best game for younger kids and stuff, just as far as, completing things and getting good scores and stuff. It just was a little out of our expertise, at least at that age. But going back into it as an adult and kind of revisiting it, it was kind of nostalgic, hearing that music come back in, and you kind of jumping back into it and flying around the different areas and remembering things and being like, oh yeah, and then actually being able to kind of be decent with the challenges and made it more challenging and a little more addicting than I remember it. So I definitely have good memories with it, but I would say I probably enjoyed it more recently than when I was a kid. So that's kind of just my initial thoughts on that.
Alright then. I guess if I was to give my history with the game, it's actually a little bit of a history on my intro to the N64 itself, so it's quite fitting that this is the first episode. Back in 97, when the N64 launched in the UK, I had a mate at school who got the system like way before I could afford it. Before my parents would get at me, I should say. But he got the system with Mario Kart, Shadows of the Empire, and Pilotwings. So the thing is, out of those three games, Pilotwings was the one that seemed the least appealing, especially to a 9-year-old boy.
Yeah. So
it's kind of like, I liked it. I mean, I played it a bit, and I thought there were cute things about it, but all my time was eaten up with Mario and Star Wars. And then he got Mario 64 itself as well, and that just completely took over. So Pilotwings, it's a weird one. It's kind of stuck in the shadow of other games around it. And I know a couple of weeks ago when you suggested perhaps doing Pilotwings as a first episode, I thought it'd be a good chance to go back and maybe reevaluate it, give it the time of day that I didn't give it back in 97, 98.
Mm-hmm.
How have your more recent experiences been? So since you've talked about playing it as a child,
right?
What was next for you in Pilotwings 64?
Well, I found that I still use the same character, and I still pretty much do everything the same way. I remember my favorite levels, and I remember, most of the music, so a lot of it just kind of came back naturally. But I did find, depending on which vehicle or mode of flying I was using, I was actually doing pretty good, better than I used to. I remember having trouble a lot with certain vehicles and stuff. The jetpack, which is called the rocket belt in this game, that one I loved it. I thought it was so cool when I was a kid, but I really struggled with it when I was a kid. But I actually found that I wasn't as bad at it this time. So I didn't get to play all the way through it and unlock everything, but I was making my way through it pretty good. In fact, I still want to keep playing it even after we record this and get some of those unlockables at the end. We'll talk about that later. But there was a couple things. Mainly the paraglider, the hang glider. That's what it's called. I suck at that thing, and so even when I was playing it today, I can steer it fine. I get that you got to get some air under you, but landing that thing, I come in way too fast, and I always end up bouncing off the ground, and I lose a bunch of points. So as far as that goes, I was struggling. Some of the other ones I wasn't having as much trouble with. I think if I was to gold medal all this stuff, it would take me a lot more time though. I was getting bronze and silver on most of them, and then I just kind of was moving on. I wasn't really trying to perfect it, and maybe if I was older and only had this game, I would spend a lot more time getting it all. So there really is a lot of depth to it. You could spend a lot of time playing it, try to unlock everything and gold medal everything, but I think just playing through it with the levels they have, the challenges they have, and the the different medals, I think there's plenty there. There's plenty challenge, and so that's kind of the vibe I was getting playing it more recently. So
yeah, okay, interesting. I suppose that about wraps it up for the initial thoughts. So I think what we're going to do next, before we go deeper into the game itself, is we're going to have a little look behind the scenes. Okay, I guess most of you listening will probably be a fan of either the game or Nintendo in general, and you probably know this wasn't the first game or the last game in the series. It's actually the sequel to an early Super Nintendo game. The original Pilotwings was one of the first games to show off the Mode 7 capabilities of the Super Nintendo. Clay, have you got any experience with the Super Nintendo one?
Zero, actually. I've never played it.
I own it, and I've owned it in the past, but I haven't ever really put much time into it. Again, it's one of those things where I think now I'm a little older and a little wiser, I kind of want to go back and give it a chance. So, maybe one day if we do a Super Nintendo podcast, that'll be one of the first ones on the list.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say there. We don't.
Dude, you know what? I own it too, and I haven't played it. I literally own it. I just realized I have it. I bought it in a big lot of games, and I was just looking at it and like, yep, there it is. So it's down in my basement. I've just never turned it on. So I also need to go down and try that out at some point. So
okay, well, join us in February 2021 when we'll be talking about Pilotwings for the Super Nintendo, I guess.
Yes.
So that original game, I believe it was developed entirely in-house by Nintendo. It never got sequelized. The game sold reasonably well, but it was never a smash hit. I mean, you're never going to see the original Pilotwings on a best of list for Super Nintendo. So yeah, I guess you could say maybe a bit of a cult classic because it's known, but it's not out there. So I believe the reason Nintendo decided to do a sequel, it wasn't so much about brand recognition or a huge desire to carry on the mythology of this world or whatever. It was more about they wanted a game that really showcased the N64 hardware early on, and an arcade flight simulator is a good way of doing that. and as I was reading up a little earlier a bit about the development, and I never actually knew this until today, but the game was actually co-developed between Nintendo EAD and a studio in Texas called Paradigm Simulation, and Nintendo worked on the game design itself. They wrote the game design doc. They designed art assets and character models and stuff, whereas Paradigm were working on the production side, so they were slapping it all together, writing the engine, the code. It's interesting. I can't think of many other Nintendo games which were developed in such a way. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, that's it is strange. Yeah, what I was reading too was that Paradigm, they didn't even really work on video games. They were more into military vehicle and flight simulators. Yeah, that was kind of. Yeah. Did you mention that?
No, I didn't mention that, but I know I read that too. So good that you brought that up.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why Nintendo contacted them. I guess they'd seen some of their simulators and thought they wanted some of that for themselves. It's a bit of a weird choice, really, isn't it, to go for a non-video game studio to help develop a launch title for a whole new system? But
absolutely.
You could argue that it paid off, I guess. Well, we'll get more into that a little later, but yeah, definitely a unique working situation for Nintendo. I can't think of anything comparable. They've licensed out games like, they licensed Zelda to Capcom and obviously Donkey Kong Country to Rare before they became second party. But yeah, I can't think of another time where they've, split development 50-50 with an outside source.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely an interesting way of going about it. Also, some of you may know Miyamoto is attached to the project as producer, but it's pretty much just an honorary title because he obviously was directing Mario 64 during this time frame. So, yeah, I don't think he actually had much input on the game itself.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but yeah, interesting development period, definitely. It started production, I believe, in mid-95, and it was a launch title in fall 96. So quite a quick turnaround, especially when it was new hardware. Well, I guess because they split their assets 50-50, I guess that's why development was sped up quite a bit. So yeah, this seems to have paid off.
Yeah, definitely. If you guys are interested in reading up on some of the development, there's definitely a lot of information out there about it. So it's worth looking into because there's quite a bit, and it's kind of interesting. So
yeah, it's this weird thing, isn't it? Whenever you play a new game or a game you didn't really know much about, the first thing, I don't know about you, but the first thing I do when I'm done is I'll just go online and research the development of it. Whether it's a AAA game or just a fun little time, and I always find it quite interesting to see what went on behind the scenes. And I think it's about time we talked about the presentation of the game. Okay, so looking at the presentation, so this would be, your visual audio side of things. Clay, again, you've got a bit more experience, a bit more memory of this game, so why don't you take us on this one?
Yeah, I guess thinking back when I first played it, it was never that I don't remember ever saying, holy cow, like these are the most amazing graphics, or these are the most amazing physics. But I remember as a kid being blown away with how, it's silly to say it now, but how large the areas were that we were flying around. And I would just grab, I'd go into, I think there's like a free fly mode, and I would just go fly around the level in a jetpack thing and just fly around and land in things and, on top of a castle or in the beach, and just, I don't know, my kind of just like made up my own little world inside my head and just used my imagination. And so at the time, like, it just blew my mind how big the worlds were, and they had cool little houses and details and boats, out on the water driving around, and you could, take the gyrocopter and shoot at boats in the water or shoot at the houses, and so there was I just remember more, less about the visual and more just about how big the world was. I think that was something at the time that I thought was pretty cool. So
yeah, no, I see what you mean, definitely, about the size of things. If you directly compare it to the other launch title, Mario 64, obviously that game had quite wide open areas, but the islands in Pilotwings were, significantly bigger. Like, I think there's about 4 or 5 different islands, and the largest of which is called Little States, which is a sort of miniature version of the United States. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you were to sort of just land in one of, like the rocket suit, the rocket belt jetpack thing, and literally like walk from end to end in free flight mode, I mean, that's probably like, 20 to 30 times bigger than the average stage in Mario.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So, but obviously, I mean, there are shortcuts, there are workarounds. Obviously, when you really get down to it, the areas aren't as highly detailed as the ones in Mario and other launch titles, but they find interesting ways of getting around it. There's like quite a lot of graphical tricks. They use level of detail models, which means sort of as you get further and further away from an object, it becomes less detailed. Like the poly count goes down and the texture becomes smaller and smaller, and then as you approach it, the opposite happens. So that helps, keep the game running well. It also takes advantage of mip mapping, Z buffering, texture filtering, and anti-aliasing. So a lot of techniques which ended up being quite common throughout the N64's lifespan, because they always had to find workarounds to get these fantastic new 3D games running well on the hardware. So you could argue that Pilotwings was something of a trendsetter, because it was the first game on a Nintendo system, at least, to use a lot of these graphic techniques. Yeah.
And it's interesting because, from what I can tell, most of what Nintendo was promoting leading up to this game was kind of the feeling and the how it felt to drive these things, fly these things around, kind of the physics involved with those. Whereas I feel like they should have been promoting more, the size of these areas and some of these, graphical things they were doing to make it all kind of work. I feel like that's more impressive than, because it just feels like you're flying around. Maybe at the time it was way more impressive, but maybe it just hasn't, it's not as impressive nowadays. But I don't know. I agree. I think all that stuff is pretty impressive and something that they continue to use. So it's kind of I'm sure they touched on it, but it just feels like that should have been their big point that they were talking about. But
yeah, no, I agree. It's I think have you ever played the third game in the series for the 3DS, Pilotwings Resort?
I have not.
Right, okay. See, the thing, I mean, I'm not going to talk about this too much, but the thing that annoyed me somewhat with that game, even though I didn't have many memories of the N64 title at that point, I remembered the N64 game had multiple islands that were all quite varied, but the 3DS game, it's all set on is it Woohoo Island? You know, that was introduced in Wii Sports Resort.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what
Yeah.
you're talking about. Yeah.
They used that in a few games, and Pilotwings Resort, it's all set on one island, which is roughly the same size as an island in Pilotwings 64.
Jeez,
So-
that's lame.
Yeah, so it's weird, isn't it, to think that the N64 title, which was the first of its kind, it was one of Nintendo's first forays into a full 3D game, and they managed to squeeze like 5 massive islands into it, and yet 15 years later, on more powerful hardware, they kind of struggled.
Yeah.
Or didn't struggle, or maybe just, maybe took the lazy route, just have one island for everything.
Huh.
So, yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Because I don't think Pilotwings 64 is a very pretty game, but it's serviceable. It doesn't look as dated as a lot of other games of this era.
Yeah.
It just looks alright. It looks, it's fine for what it is.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay, we're agreeing with a lot.
But yeah, we'll find our games where we don't agree as much. One thing I do think, in my opinion, is something that has stood the test of time is the music.
Yes.
That's something that I don't know. I guess I didn't realize how good it was until I went back and played it this last year, and all of a sudden it all came back to me. And I know even you, when we were talking about it, you're like, is that the one game where it's like do 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 do? I was like, yeah. So even you, who hasn't played it that much, remembered a song. It was in your head. So I think that just says a lot about it. And yeah, the music's interesting because it's kind of jazzy. It pretty much is like adult music, or adult movie music, I guess you could say. It's kind of got that bounce down at times, and so which I still love it, and it creates this very calm, and it's not the kind of music. It's like dun 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 dun. We got like, it's not super like action movie. It's a little bit more calming. There is one song when you're going to fight a big monster guy that it's a little bit more like, all right, let's get down to business. Let's do this. But a lot of the songs in it are just a little bit more. Even the menu music is just real. It's kind of soft and something you'd hear on the Weather Channel or whatever. But it just fit really well, and it kind of calms you down. And you're flying, for goodness sake. It's supposed to be kind of this, bird-like thing where it's kind of peaceful. And so I think whoever's call it was on, doing music in that way and that style, I think it's brilliant. I think it fits it perfectly. I don't know about you, but
yeah, no. Again, I find myself agreeing with you. The soundtrack, as you mentioned, you touched on that anecdote. We were talking about Pilotwings, and I was humming that theme, and I said, "Oh, is that Pilotwings?" Because that song has always stuck in my head from an early N64 title, but I could never quite place it. And you were like, "Yeah, dude, that's Pilotwings." And then it just sort of all came flooding back. And then, when I started playing it, for this podcast, I think that's the first song you hear in the game, isn't it? When you go on the beginner class,
Yep.
the tutorial mode, I guess it is really. The first one you choose would be the hang glider stage,
Yep.
and that has that song on it. It's wonderful. Dan Hess, the name of the guy, did the soundtrack for this game. Looked him up earlier. Interestingly, he composed F1 World Grand Prix, that classic.
oh yeah,
Then he retired from the game industry altogether and just like plays in a band now.
huh?
So definitely, I guess he must have had his own reasons. I guess maybe he thought he couldn't be as creative in the industry as he could be out of the industry. I don't know.
I guess.
I'm not going to. I'm already falling into that trap of trying to speculate on people's motives. So,
Well, regardless, it's still one of my favorite soundtracks for N64. So maybe down the road at some point we could do, top 10 games for the N64 that are, top 10 soundtracks for the N64. And I promise you I will put this at least as my number 10. So look forward to that. So
it's weird, isn't it? Because the N64, there's a lot of really good soundtracks out there. For as much as people rat on the sound hardware, man, there were some technical wizards back in the late 90s who really got the most out of it.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking, and this is the thing, I've got so much affection for these like B-list forgotten games. So Pilotwings, not so much because I didn't have that much experience, but other games that pop into my head like Body Harvest, Mischief Makers, Wet Tricks, they all had such cool soundtracks. I don't know if you know any of those yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I've played the games. I don't know if I could, hum one of them off the top of my head, though.
Okay. But yeah, I get a feeling that elaborate praise is going to be a recurring theme when we're talking about music for these, all these N64 games.
Definitely. And I'm a musician, so not that makes me, better than you or something, but I definitely have an appreciation for it. I know a lot of people who enjoy games have a good appreciation for it, but... So.
Well, you've got more of an understanding of the the technicality and the artistry behind the creation of the music, whereas for me it's just, oh, that's a pretty song.
Yeah exactly.
I'd say on the whole it's not a bad looking game, but it's not going to blow you away. It sounds like it didn't blow either of us away in the 90s. The graphics do their job. It looks fine for what it is. Mm-hmm. I should point out actually, and we'll get more onto the characters later, but I'm not a big fan of the art style for the characters personally.
Okay.
I think it's a little too, I get what they were going for, but it's a little bit too funky for me.
Right.
I don't think it fits the serene aesthetic of the rest of the game. So, but
there are some silly moments. I mean, especially with things you unlock in the end, like toward the end, that things that aren't as realistic. And at one point, you fight a big monster, and so I think if it was just this really normal looking person with really normal features, I feel like maybe it would be not as Nintendo, or a little too realistic at times. So I think they were trying to put a little bit of a Nintendo flair on it, even though it's not the most Nintendo thing in the world. But I get what you're saying. I think that it doesn't necessarily match with the aesthetic of everything else, minus some of these things that would never really happen in the world. But at the same time, I feel like it kind of helps give it a little bit of flair. Otherwise, I think it'd be a little more boring, honestly. But
okay, fair enough. Our first on-air disagreement.
Yeah,
but
there you go.
No, that's cool. But I think more and more now we're sort of we're pushing away from the presentation. So I think that'll bring us into our next section: gameplay and mechanics. Okay, Clay. Again, I'm going to let you lead on this one if you want.
Okay. So basically there's 3 main events in Pilotwings 64 that you have to complete in order to finish the game. As we've kind of mentioned, there's hang gliding, rocket belt, which is a jetpack, and the gyrocopter. And so each of these has a number of challenges. You start off in beginner class, and you have to go. You're supposed to go through all 3 of those. You can kind of go out of order, though. If you just wanted, you could focus on just hang glider, just rocket belt, just gyrocopter, work your way down through beginner class, class A, class B, and then pilot class. And so each one you go through, I believe each one adds an extra mission, as well as obviously the difficulty goes up. And so as you play through them, you get a couple missions, and you can scroll through them using the C buttons. It's kind of got a Mario 64 feel in that way, where you can kind of pick what you want to do first, And actually, it's more like Mario Party, where it explains what you got to do. You can see the map. There's even a button that gives you a hint on things that could help you out. And then from there, you go into that mission, and you start out. And then if you complete it, it racks up the points based on different things, such as if you got all the targets, if you did it in a certain amount of time, if you had a smooth landing or an accurate landing as to where you're supposed to end, things like that. And so it adds up your points. You need so many points in order to medal either bronze, silver, or gold. Once you do that, you can move on to the next class. In order to beat the game, gotta do all the classes, as I said. So that's kind of the objective. So once you are getting ready to go, you get to choose a character. And there are, 6 characters total. Those include Goose, Hawk, Ibis, Kiwi, Lark, and Robin. Me personally, I don't think I ever played with anybody except for Goose. He was my main dude. I might have played with Hawk once, but definitely Goose was my go-to guy. I don't know if you played with him, Kev. He's the one that is decked out in Stars and Stripes. He's super Americanized and looking real fresh.
Yeah, no, I only played as, is it Lark, the one who's based on Nestor from the
Yes.
Power?
Yeah,
that's the only one I played as. I don't know. I guess maybe I should. I mean, are there actually any gameplay differences depending on the character?
there is, which I guess I never really knew as a kid, but I did read about it. I think it's mostly just comes down to their weights, and they kind of, they maneuver differently, and they have different. Some of them go faster based on being smaller. I assume Lark probably moves a lot quicker than Hawk, who's pretty large. But I don't know if being large somehow helps better. But yeah, I haven't read exactly what each does, but I know that there is, some weight involved in that. So anyway, so you choose your character, and then you choose your level, and you kind of get into it. Let's see. So that's kind of the main premise. Like you said, there's multiple different levels that you go through different things. And then once you get through those, you unlock these additional extra stages, I guess you could call them, which include skydiving, human cannonball event, and the jumble hopper. Now, these I don't ever remember playing as a kid. I don't think I even knew they existed. I think you can see on the right side of the level select where they would be, but I never unlocked them. I don't think I was, good enough. But looking through some footage and stuff, they're really cool, and they're a lot more, goofy and over the top than the rest of the game. And so now, knowing that these exist, I really want to go back and check them out. The jumble hopper is kind of weird. It's like these boots that you put on, and you basically can make these huge, like Hulk-like jumps, and then you land on the ground, and then you immediately make another jump, and so you're just hopping around basically. And so it's interesting. I don't know if there's challenges for them. I'm assuming there is. And then the only other thing they have that you unlock is the Birdman, which I can't remember exactly what you have to do to unlock it, but I assume it has to do with beating the whole thing.
I can actually tell you how to unlock the
All right,
Birdman.
go ahead.
That's one thing I knew since childhood, weirdly enough.
Okay.
Because my mate's cousin did it and he showed us. Now, I don't know how many there are and where they are, but throughout the game, somewhere there are some hidden stars, Birdman stars.
Oh, I remember those. Yeah.
And I'm guessing it was kind of a reference to Mario 64 because the development was going on at the same time. So yeah, you collect the hidden stars. As far as I'm aware, you go in free flight mode to do it because I can't see how you could realistically do it during a mission.
Right.
But I do remember, I've got this vivid memory of me and my mate playing it once, and that I'm pretty sure he flew behind a waterfall or something and found a star.
Yeah. That sounds familiar.
So, again, yeah, I mean, let's make it clear now to the audience at home, neither of us have actually 100% of this game. We've played it quite a bit to remind ourselves, but we're never going to force ourselves to complete everything, because this should be about having fun and getting a feel for the game, not about being a completionist.
Yeah.
So,
no, but I do remember that now that you bring that up, because I do remember as a kid
Right.
finding that. And I think if you hit one of them, I don't know if it was just the last one or what, it like immediately transforms you in the middle of the level to be in the Birdman. Does that sound right to you?
that sounds right, yeah.
And so I remember as a kid, flying around. I assume whoever owned the cartridge before we did probably, unlocked everything, which gave us, the ability to do it. Because I think otherwise, I don't think we would have unlocked it. But I do remember as a kid thinking that was super cool. Like, man, have wings and fly and stuff. So I thought that was pretty awesome. But...
All right, so yeah, I mean, and that is one thing I do remember. As I said, I also remember the cannonball bonus. I remember my mate playing it again. It's weird because like I assumed going into this, you would have known all of this stuff, but it seems like I know some stuff that you don't know, and you know some stuff that I don't know. So we kind of make it up. But I remember the human cannonball event. Now this is all I can remember. I remember there being Mount Rushmore, but with Mario's head. Mm-hmm. And I don't know who what the other heads were. Maybe there were characters from the game, but
yeah, it's just presidents.
What real life presidents?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't think that'd actually be in the Pilotwings version, but okay. So I guess Mario replaces someone's head, and I remember you fire into his nose, and then he turns into Wario.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And yeah, they're real presidents. It looks like George Washington, Teddy Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln, if I can see them clearly enough. So, but yeah, you're right. The Mario was in it, and you turn him into Wario. That was always pretty cool for me as a kid. I remember that.
So who's missing from that Mount Rushmore?
I should know this because I'm an American, but I can't remember. I've actually never been to Mount Rushmore. It's like one of the only places I've never been to in the United States. It looks like they moved George Washington. Mario would be where George Washington is in real life, and then I don't know if that's Thomas Jefferson. They took him out, whoever that guy is. I hope I don't get yelled at for this. So, but yeah, and so that was a cool little thing they threw in just to, it's Thomas Jefferson. Okay. So they took him out, moved George over, and put Mario in his place. So.
Isn't that weird to think the first... Okay, one of the only two original launch games for the N64, it's got a very strong, like, American slant to it. Like, you've got, that little states thing, you've got Mount Rushmore in there. I believe it's got a mini replica of New York, San Francisco, Miami, LA.
It's got a Statue of Liberty in it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the New York thing. I don't know if they've got like the World Trade Center or anything like that. I'm guessing so because
they do, and they have a little Empire State Building.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because as I said, I didn't 100% the game, but I did play a couple of missions on Little States. I believe I played a section in LA earlier, which, even to me, as a non-American who's never been to LA, immediately I recognise as, that's LA downtown,
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, I suppose this links back into the fact that it was co-developed by an American company.
Right. Yeah.
So.
And I love the little carnival fair thing. I always remember going on the jetpack and just trying to go land on the Ferris wheel and always getting destroyed. But just cool little details like that where as a kid it's fun to explore around and look at the different stuff.
And I suppose I've got some quite fond memories the more I think about it of like the early experience, because this was, as one of the first N64 games, it was almost like a play box because I wasn't used to 3D games. So yeah, stuff like you mentioned, like the little Ferris wheel fairground, the boat in the river on the one stage.
Yep.
Just cool little things like that. It's like, oh, okay, let's try going on there. Never done that in a video game before.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that, outside of the boots that let you jump around, there's really no ground vehicles, which is kind of a bummer because as a kid, at this time to be able to drive around in these big areas, it would have been pretty fun to, even if they had like an ATV or a motorbike or something that you could, jump off these mountains and things. It would have been pretty cool. But I get that it's more to fly over and the spectacle of it all. But I don't know. I just thought that would have been cool.
I think the problem is there as well is that the areas, the design when you get up close it isn't what other games of the era were. You know what I mean? Like as we mentioned earlier, when you're very, very close to things, they don't really hold up too well.
Yeah.
So I guess the idea was to keep you away from all that.
Yeah. No, I agree. That makes sense. Is it cool if I talk about 2 levels that were my favorites, I guess?
Let's move into our final thoughts. Okay then, Clay. You said you had some favourite levels to talk about?
Yeah. First one is a hang glider level. I can't remember exactly which. I don't know if it was Class A or Class B, but it's test 2 called Chicken Dive.
Yeah,
and so,
Class A. Yeah, did that today, mate.
Oh, that level is just really cool because for those who haven't played it, you just start off at the top of this snowy mountain, and you just like push right up on the stick, and you go immediately down into this kind of tunneled out part of the mountain as you're coming down it, and you have to fly through as many rings as you can, and then you have to, at the very last second, you got to pull up before you run right into this giant, I don't know, other mountain part. And so and just trying to get your paraglider or whatever, your hang glider, all leveled out and still able to pull up at the last second. It's just a really cool level. It's kind of exciting, and it was one that, even though I don't think I ever crashed on it, I still wanted to play it a couple times because A, I wanted to stick the landing a little better, and B, it was just so much fun to go jumping off and stuff. So that's my first one. The second one, and the one that I remember, even without even turning the game on, was a test on the paraglider. That's what it's called, right? The paraglider. And basically, it's called Hawk Attack. And so, the message at the beginning of it reads, "Red alert, the giant robot Mecha Hawk is attacking the city. Hit Mecha Hawk with 5 missiles." And so, for whatever reason, the gyrocopter is equipped with missiles. I don't know if that is a standard accessory for gyrocopters in the real world, but if you were to hit the Z button or the Z button, if you're weird, it would pull up these crosshairs, and then as soon as you let go, you would fire this missile out from underneath you, and it would go flying out. And I remember as a kid, I'd just go around, flying around everywhere and shooting everything I could, every building, every little thing. And so, but in this one, they actually have a bad guy that you have to go out and kill, basically destroy. And so you go out there, and this Mecha Hawk, which is basically a giant robot-looking version of Hawk, the character, and you have to hit him 5 times. And so you're flying around, and you have to shoot him down. And I think every time you shoot a missile, you lose some fuel. Is that correct? Did you ever notice that?
I didn't actually notice that. Is that a thing?
It might be. I remember it being it, but I didn't really stop to look. So maybe I'm making that up, but I could have sworn that's how it worked. So like the more you shot, the less fuel you had, but I could be wrong. But regardless,
I suppose that would be a fair trade-off because you don't actually have ammo. So
right,
that would
exactly.
be fair.
And so you're just making loops and trying to shoot this guy, and he'll change direction on you and try to. I don't know if he purposely is trying to dodge your hits, but he's also throwing like rocks and dirt clumps or whatever at you, and so you can't really super slow down and drive up next to him and start shooting at him. So it takes a little bit of skill. I didn't have any trouble with it when I played him today. I kind of flew right through it. But as a kid, I don't even know if I ever beat it, to be honest. We probably did. But it's kind of funny. Every time you hit it, he goes, "Rah!" and he runs away with his arms up in the air. And so, I I don't know. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it's literally the only thing like it in the game. It's the only time that you shoot at targets in it, but you don't shoot at something moving around that's quote unquote real. But I don't know. It was kind of it's a darker level, and the music's a little more intense, and so it just kind of had a different feel than the rest of the game. And as a kid, it was pretty super cool. So those are kind of two of the big levels that stood out to me. So.
Okay, well, I do look forward to trying that one out. I didn't quite get that far myself today. I did I think I already mentioned this. I did all of Class A and a little bit of Class B, and I was actually going to mention that chicken dive stage that you were talking about with
really?
the hang glider. That is just an awesome stage. And it's weird though, because it's one of those bloody annoying ones where the first time I did it, I got every single ring perfect, and then I screwed up the landing.
Oh.
So then for the next 6 attempts, I couldn't get the rings, all of them, perfectly. And it was annoying me, and I refused to miss one because I thought, no, I've done this, I can do it. So I just kept retrying and retrying. But yeah, because it's weird, isn't it? Because as you dive off at the start, you have to immediately push forward on the control stick, otherwise you're going to miss that first ring.
Yeah,
you really have to, and it's cool because it kind of gives you an intense feeling, like you really have to break that controller just to make it work. Kind of reminds me a little bit of. Have you seen the movie GoldenEye?
Yes.
Right. You know the opening scene where Bond jumps in the plane as it goes into the chasm.
Yep.
And then he's just pulling so hard on the flight stick just to pull up at the last moment. In a weird way, this kind of gave me a flashback to that, because it's you're diving down the chasm and then you have to pull up just at the right time so you don't smash into the rock face.
Yep. Definitely.
It's awesome. Yeah, so I like that. Weirdly, I remembered my favourite vehicle from my brief experience as a child being the rocket belt, but this time I've actually got to say it's the gyrocopter.
Okay.
I find just the handling is just right. It's not too easy, it's not too hard. You can get some good speed on that thing. You've got the rockets, so that adds gameplay possibilities. I don't know, I just think the gyrocopter's a good all-round. I like the hang glider, but sticking the landing is really annoying because it takes such skill. Yeah. You kind of have to you have to lower yourself at just the right angle and then pull up and you do the air brake at just the right moment so you run across the landing target. I don't think the game gives you much leeway. It's not very generous, and the camera doesn't make it too easy either. And this is something really I should have mentioned earlier when we were talking about mechanics. The camera for the most part is fine, but there are some moments where it suffers from early 3D camera syndrome. I don't know if you agree.
At times, but I thought you hit the C buttons and you kind of can adjust, but there are a couple times where I'm running out of fingers. I'm having to pull extra fingers up to hit the C buttons, but yeah, I agree. It's a little difficult, but they gave you your shadow and allow, so when you're looking down, you can kind of see where you're at and stuff. So it could have been a lot worse. I think it could have been much worse than it is. But
yeah, they pull it off okay. I'd say it's just every now and then there are a couple of annoying. I remember there was a really annoying stage in Class A of the rocket belt where you have to land on a bunch of different small target platforms. I don't know if you did that one yet.
Yep.
And it's you turn the camera to see where they are, but the camera moves at such, I don't know, it sort of goes all the way round to 90-degree angle.
Right.
It's you can't smoothly adjust the camera. And maybe I've been spoilt by modern analog camera controls, but yeah, I don't know, just little niggles. I mean, overall for a first attempt, they did a great job, and I think. Okay, I didn't finish the game this week in time for the podcast, but you know what? I didn't want to rush it because I was having a good time. I think overall it's a solid launch title. That's what we got to remember. It was a launch title. I I wouldn't be putting it in my top 10 anytime soon.
No.
But I think it's worth picking up. I mean, I got it for $5 at a used game store. You guys can probably find it reasonably cheap. I believe it's now on the North American Wii U Virtual Console.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, that actually might be a better way to play it if you get as short-tempered as me, because you can just like save state after certain events. Like a okay. So
yeah, I agree. I think for the price, because it's pretty easy to find. It's not hard to find. They're not, people aren't, paying a ton for them. So I think if you've never played it, it's worth picking up and at least playing through it a little bit and kind of getting a feel for it. I think, trying to get enough points to move on to the next stage can be slightly addicting, and it's a fun challenge. So if you're into that kind of stuff, I think it's definitely worth checking out. The one thing I feel like this game is missing, and I'm assuming it was rushed at least a little bit out the door. If they could have put a little more into it, I would have loved to have seen a multiplayer on it, like a 4-player split screen where, you're all out. You could just do a free roam where everyone's flying around doing whatever, and you could do one, with little mini, challenges like who can collect the most, fly through the most rings in 2 minutes or something. And so I don't know. I don't even know if they would have been able to do something like that. I don't see why not. So I don't know if that's something maybe they had thought about doing and never did, or if it was just never on the agenda to begin with. Right. But that was not that makes the game any worse. It's a good one-player game. So, but there really is nothing multiplayer about it. So, which also says something about launch titles when there's just most of them didn't really have a lot of multiplayer into them. But that's for another subject for another day. So. But overall, I like the game. I think it's definitely worth checking out. So,
okay, yeah, So it's a solid thumbs up from both of us, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely going to be. I think you mentioned earlier you're going to keep playing this.
Definitely.
After, which is good. There's sometimes in the past. I've done a couple of podcasts before, and sometimes I play a game just for the show. And I'd never touch it again after that. But I think no, this time I'm really going to stick around, and I'm not going to be playing it 24/7. But it's one I might throw in every few weeks, see if I can get a couple more medals, improve my skills, and work towards unlocking some of those secret stages. They sound pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of glad there's no push button codes to just unlock them from the off, because it means you really do need to have the skill.
Yeah.
To really get anything out of it. But anyway, I think that about wraps it up for our first episode. How you feeling?
Good, man. My butt's a little sore. I don't have a very comfortable computer chair, so if we're gonna keep doing these, I might need to get myself a better chair. So,
or just put a cushion under your ass.
I could do that. I probably should do that. So, but yeah, no, this is good. This is. You definitely know more about some of this stuff than me, but luckily on this episode, we picked a game where I have a little more experience with it. So, but I feel like we kind of went back and forth enough, and it worked well. So,
yeah. All right then. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. This was the first episode, hopefully of many to come, of Strictly 64. You can check us out on www.kandclay.com. Contact information will be listed below in the YouTube description or the page description, where the iTunes, wherever you found us, we'll have some details there. So yeah, like and subscribe if you like what you heard, and check out the website. We're gonna have all sorts of content rolling out over the next few months. Not just about games, like I mentioned before, movies, music, the lot. I mean, look, bloody Clay is a musician, so
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what more could you want, really? Seriously?
Jeez. Seriously.
Alright, this has been fun. I don't think we're about ready to say which game we're doing next week, but okay. There's definitely a few more games coming up soon. Hopefully we're going to try and do these week to week, but if there's ever a gap, don't worry, we'll be coming back. And yeah, you guys have a great week, and hopefully you will be hearing us soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. We'll see you around.